One of the most important concepts in events such as this one is temporary importation of goods, where specific goods can enter a country for specific use during that event for a limited period of time without the importers having to pay full customs duties and other taxes if applicable, provided of course those goods meet particular criteria and stay compliant depending on the local customs measures imposed. Have you been following the World Cup? I confess that I personally don't take much interest in football or the players or the teams or the strategy that they employ to win the games. But the more news I read about the World Cup and the FIFA events, the more interesting I find the actual gossip and the politics behind the organization of such events. Have you ever thought about what actually goes into the planning and organizing of an event of such a massive scale? Well, this is something that I want to explore in this video today. So let's dive in. First off, the World Cup is supposed to, in theory, not only promote the camaraderie and the love of football, but it is also supposed to promote the tourism in the host country as well as its GDP. Because this event is expected to host not only the games but also a lot of football fans that will inevitably visit the country, and so different industries related to tourism and other will inevitably benefit from the organization of such an event. The US was chosen in 2018 to host this event, and I guarantee you that the organization and the planning has started already in 2018. Just to give you an example, only the grass that the football fields are covered with for the players to play on is naturally grown grass that took from somewhere between 3 to 5 years to get to the final 48 hours within which all of those fields were actually finalized. So the grass seeds were harvested in Ohio and Washington. Then they were locally grown in sod farms. Then the UV lights, just to make sure that it's kept alive, came from the Netherlands. Industrial pitch ventilation came from Germany. So just to make sure that the fields were ready and were in good quality, all of these different components needed to involve other countries around the world. Not to mention, of course, all the engineering, all of the structural planning that went into it right before all these goods were brought in and later on assembled. The Mexico Azteca Stadium needed its roof reinforced, and the roofing materials required were actually manufactured in Saudi Arabia. And then modular steel trays for sitting came from China. LED video board components also came from China. High-end broadcast gear came from Japan, for example. Then you have the specific machinery for field leveling and pitch marking that were actually imported from Brazil. Then after all the fields were ready in all three countries, and mind you that a lot of the grass, for example, had to be transported from the US to Canada and Mexico, there's an array of other businesses that had to initiate planning, which includes hotels, restaurants, bars, clubs, theme parks, anything you can think of that is related to tourism. All of the different industries in the US, as well as Mexico and Canada, were aware that they would be hosting the World Cup, and this is the perfect opportunity to make some money and therefore ensure that they are on theme, ensure that they can respond to the needs that this event will actually generate. This, of course, relates to the official merchandise like jerseys, scarves, caps, footballs, t-shirts, and other retail products that fill the fan zones. Then you have the temporary technical setups that support both the in-stadium and off-stadium experience. These are display screens, cameras, audio systems. Then, of course, as I've already mentioned, the relationship to the hospitality goods, which may require event furniture, signs, barriers, lighting, catering equipment, temporary structures in the cities, to make sure that there are fan festivals that FIFA is very big on. Then you have the sponsors installations. A part of it is obviously sourced locally, but a huge part of stuff required for these events for any of these industries actually comes from abroad. And then there's of course the team's cargo. They don't just travel light with a suitcase, they bring quite a lot of specialized equipment because they want to eliminate any uncertainty and create the familiar environment for the players. That includes training apparel, their uniforms, custom boots, medical equipment, supplements, tactical gear, and often team specific comfort items and food. I mean, we've heard stories about Argentina bringing a bunch of its beef and Norway bringing a bunch of salmon and oranges. Although I read that oranges wasn't actually not true. They keep sourcing oranges locally. So the correlation between what is actually brought from abroad by the teams tends to be 80-20. So generally speaking, they source the majority of goods locally, but this still means that the local companies ensuring that these goods get to the players have to source those goods from somewhere. And generally they do rely on import of quite a big part of those stuff. I've heard a few remarks regarding the quality of food in the US, for instance, but regardless of the quality of the food, the players need to be in as comfortable an environment as possible, and they don't want to have any surprises by using spices or specific food supplements or food in general that they are not used to, that would potentially make them perform worse than they expected to. All of these goods, of course, need to be moved into the US as well as Canada and Mexico legally. It does help that the three countries have a free trade agreement amongst themselves, which makes those movements smoother and mostly duty-free. In international events such as this one, there are specific customs facilitations. One of the most important concepts in events such as this one is temporary importation of goods, where specific goods can enter a country for specific use during that event for a limited period of time without the importers having to pay full customs duties and other taxes if applicable, provided of course those goods meet particular criteria and stay compliant depending on the local customs measures imposed. A common instrument that is used for temporary importation are ATA carnets, which are often described as passports attributed to specific goods. This carnet is employed in about 80 countries and has been evolving. It is now used in a digital format and it simplifies movement of professional equipment across borders. It's also relevant for exhibitions and allows the import of commercial samples as well. But of course, for an event, a multi-country event such as World Cup, the complexity of course increases, because the logistics companies have to ensure that the goods arrive at specific places within a particular time and for specific purposes. Some goods are eligible for relief, other goods are eligible for partial relief, and other goods may actually require permits that go beyond your dealings with the customs authorities. Food, for example, might require sanitary and phytosanitary certificates, etc., etc. At these mega events, storage of goods also becomes quite problematic because some goods cannot be just left in a warehouse somewhere, and so they are moved right before the event takes place. And so it's extremely important to guarantee that they get there on time. And so the level of preparation that goes into transporting all of these things has to be planned way in advance, just to make sure that they are delivered within narrow windows as required, to then be removed almost right after the games, for example, take place. And so often, because there are different teams involved, there's this rotation of things coming and going. So logistically, the objective is really to reduce congestion, minimize loss, improve security, and ensure that every item is where it needs to be. And of course, this is not just about the teams, this is about the broader economic ecosystem that is involved in these events. And also, let's not forget all the waste that is generated after an event such as this one. We know for a fact that all of the grass, for example, cannot be reused as of yet, and it will essentially be removed from the fields and will need to be potentially recycled, or at least it should be. The same goes for pretty much every single product that is put in the US, Canada, or Mexico, or any other country for these events, because this event will be over soon, but all the goods that have been imported and have been used for the purpose of this event will need to be repurposed. This is why there's quite a lot of criticism of the FIFA events, because different countries tend to invest quite a lot of money in the organization of these events, but then when looking at the actual expenditure as opposed to the actual gains, it turns out that the expenditures actually overcome the gains massively. I think so far there's only been 2 countries that have managed to spend less than what they earned, and this was Mexico and Russia, whereas all the other World Cup hosts have been somewhat criticized by the fact that they have invested heavily in building this new infrastructure, which later on cannot really be reutilized and repurposed for other events and other things in the host countries. Brazil, for example, is one of those countries where different football fields were built but not repurposed later on. In the meantime, leave a comment. Please tell me what you think. Maybe there's a curiosity you would like to share. Otherwise, leave a like or visit my website for a professional consultation. Thank you for watching and see you next time.